Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce, Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 14th of November 2024, and we are going to talk geopolitics first in this video today because there is so much to talk about. There's an awful lot going on around the world, but particularly in the US, and it does concern Ukraine. So a lot of the appointments are very relevant for the US's, I guess, a direction of travel concerning Ukraine. We'll start internationally and we'll look at Russian media reporting that Putin will not go to the G20 summit. So there's a group of 20 sort of most significant countries in the world, economically speaking. In Rio de Janeiro, the delegation will be led by the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. It's claimed that he decided not to go to G20 because he allegedly does not want to disrupt the good work of the summit. Of course, there's an international criminal court warrant on his head, arrest warrant, and Brazil would be obliged as a signatory to the Rome Statute to arrest him. Now, I love this picture. Favourite picture of the day. It's just, every time I look at it, brilliant, brilliant. UN Chief Guterres continues his tour called Meeting with Putin's Minions. Yesterday, he had an important meeting in Baku with Russian Prime Minister Mishustin. By the way, this photo was taken by an absolute genius of the frame, very accurately capturing the essence of what is happening. There's no great news other than that Guterres, the head of the UN, is rubbing shoulders with all sorts of Russians. But I absolutely love that. So good. Right, anyway. Paris prosecutor's office is calling for Marine Le Pen to be disqualified from running for office. The leader of the National Rally could face up to 10 years in prison, a fine of €1 million, but above all, if she does not hide her ambitions for the 2027 presidential elections, she could be disqualified from running for office for 10 years. So what's happening there is the French are doing what Merrick Garland was too afraid to do in the US. So since September the 30th, the judges have been investigating the affair of the parliamentary assistants of the Rassemblement National, a case of suspicion of fictitious jobs aimed at diverting money from the European Parliament to the benefit of the party. We have an article in Politico saying prosecutors request ban on Marine Le Pen running for public office in embezzlement trial. Three-time presidential candidate is accused of having embezzled EU funds, charges she denies. But yeah, prosecutors on Wednesday asked that she be found guilty of embezzlement, sentenced to prison and barred for running for public office, including the French presidency for the next 5 years. Le Pen, the National Rally Party and 24 other individuals, including current and former French lawmakers and MEPs, are accused of illicitly using European Parliament funds for key parliamentary assistance, parliamentary assistance for work on party business rather than on EU affairs from 2004 to 16. Le Pen and her co-defendants have all denied the charges. Prosecutors asked that Le Pen receive the harshest sentence of all, noting that she was both an MEP and party leader while some of the crimes purportedly took place. They asked the judge to give her 5 years in prison, 3 of which would be suspended, and a fine of €300,000. The ban on running for public office would extend past 2027 when the next presidential election is scheduled to take place. It's fascinating, and law needs to be followed. If she is guilty, then lock her up. But this is one of those things where it's a bit like Trump, actually, where being given the label of sort of criminal or felon or whatever actually is a badge of honor, maybe, and gives someone even greater electability. Counterintuitively, right? It shouldn't be the case, but humans are weird, and it might just give Rassemblement National extra wind in their sails in future elections. But, it doesn't surprise me at all. Corruption follows such parties, I think, more easily than others. Right, I just wanted, this is just a random comment. We talked about Norway the other day about having lots of extra money and should they be paying more, even though they are helping an absolute bunch. But they've made a lot of money out of their natural resources due to the the energy crisis, which is a direct result of the war in Ukraine. In other words, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has made Norway a bunch of money. You can see it like that. And some Norwegians say we need to pay more. In fact, one of the major Norwegian political parties is saying, look, we should be paying 3 times as much towards this helping Ukraine than we are presently because of this situation. I love this from the Quail Singh saying, As a Swede, we love the Norwegians. One could not ask for a better neighbour. Norway is unbelievably wealthy, and they have cleverly invested their oil wealth into a fund in order to build the nation for the future, somewhat disconnected from their economy as to not be reliant on this money and make from their oil. It really is a model to respect, and they do deserve that wealth because they are fair, honest and friendly people. I love this. I love the fact that it's just, you know, here we are, we're slagging off other nations and not doing enough and doing this. I just love, you got a Swede here saying, do you know what? Norwegians are really nice people, really nice neighbours. Couldn't ask for a better neighbour. Wonderful. He says, but I do think investing more into Ukraine is in line with building a better Norway for the future. And I do think Norway really should contribute more, because if anyone could, it is them. Sweden is taking loans to finance our support for Ukraine. Please help more, Norway. We need you to do the right thing for all of us. We need your help. I just thought that was a lovely comment. And also, just at the end, yeah, brilliant. We need you guys. Brilliant as you are, you do need to do a little bit more, if you don't mind me saying so. Lovely. A respectful comment from a Nordic neighbour. Right, Germany. Germany is in a very interesting situation. So what has happened is there's been this breakdown of the traffic light coalition. Is it Ampfel coalition? Anyway, traffic light coalition's breaking down. That's the FDP, the SDP, the main party, and the Greens. The Lindner, the finance minister, was sacked. There's an argument over Taurus and 3 billion euros. And so he ended up going broadly in support of Ukraine, that coalition. But now you've got a situation whereby there was going to be a vote of confidence and then a follow-up if that was lost, which one would think it would be. There'll be a follow-up election called. This was going to fall, I think, in line with Trump's inauguration. And it would have looked really bad if Trump had become president on the 20th and Germany falls apart and is chaos at exactly that time. Then Trump says, "Go look at Europe." Puh. So they've moved the timing of the vote of confidence to, I think, December, and the elections will be called in February, I think. Is that right? Something like that. And one is expecting the CDU with Merz at the helm to go into government. The AfD, the right-wing German party that is fairly extreme, is seen as a real problem in terms of challenging the establishment parties. But they are pro-Russia, as is the far left, the BSW, under Sarah Wagenknecht. It is thought that the CDU will refuse to go into a coalition with the AfD, which would be good news. And so you might end up having the CDU going to like the Great Coalition with the SPD, Olaf Scholz's party, but it's unlikely that Scholz will be the leader. It could well be Pistorius by that stage, who is the defence minister, and he's very much more popular. He's done a really good job in defence and people like him. That's my read of the situation. Make of it what you will. I could be wrong. Germany, says Thomas Tyner, who sounds German but is Italian. They asked SPD voters who they wanted as candidate, pro-defence, pro-NATO, and anti-Russia, Pistorius, twice as popular as Scholz. And they asked all voters who they want as Chancellor, and Pistorius would win. Scholz and Biden's escalation management equals voters hate it. In other words, Scholz has been dithering too much. And so there you go. They're the votes. Pistorius comes out twice as popular, basically, as Scholz. And actually is that more popular than... Is that Merz there? Interesting. Right, okay. So that's Thomas Tyner saying that. Now, Scholz has come out and given a speech just now, and it was interesting. So here we have Hans von der Burchard saying Scholz drags Ukraine into his election campaign, framing himself as a prudent peace chancellor who avoided escalation. Must sound absurd to Ukrainians. Quote, I repeat, I'm against allowing to fire weapons supplied by us far into Russia. I won't change my position on Taurus, that is. Gary Kasparov says, pathetic. Even if Scholz sincerely believed appeasing Russia was good for Germany, this has now been comprehensively refuted. The war has escalated anyway, but on Putin's terms, because Scholz and others have rejected deterrence and allowing Ukraine to strike back. And indeed, this speech, Direct Tanis says, Scholz, well, quoting Scholz, Germany's Ukraine support must not come at the cost of our country's future prosperity. It's an interesting thing to say. This is someone the problem is Germany's economy is not looking in a very good position. It's not looking good going forward, and that might cost the SPD. It should cost the SPD. That's normally what happens. I mean, look at what's happened in the US, where the economy is amazing, but by selling the narrative that inflation's bad, and it was bad, it dipped and it's coming back up, and these things take time, but not the Democrats failing to express a narrative concerning the economy and what they've done for the economy, and saying, look, this is where it was, this was not our fault, this is a global problem, all the countries in the world had it, but we've actually done all these things that's made us in a better position than all comparable nations. Look at how well we've done. We've still got work to go, though. That's how they should have sold it, but they're like blah, 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 blah. And as a result, the Republicans were able to capitalize on that and talk about inflation and sell inflation as a bigger problem than actually it was. I don't want to take inflation away from people's lived experiences, but statistically speaking, the US had actually done a really good job. Now, that's a cautionary note about narratives and being able to express your own narrative about what you stand for, what's going on, what you've done, or if you're in opposition, the kind of opposite to that. The issue here is that Germany is not in a great economic situation, and SPD will need to somehow explain that. So it's likely that the CDU will get in. CDU, interestingly, Merz is more of a almost like Nigel Farage anti-immigration kind of guy. Germany's obviously had that history of Angela Merkel letting in a lot of people. I would argue, I have done in the past, I don't know how accurate this is, that there'll be that's a lot more to do with the economy and trying to grow the economy, because either if you have stagnant populations, then you need growth through somehow you need to get your growth. So immigration is often a way to getting economic growth, which is interesting when you look at the United States and their position on immigration, etc., etc. So if you shut down immigration, then that might have an impact on shutting down economic growth. But anyway, Merz is very much your conservative leader. Although he's really pro-Ukraine, that's an interesting guy, and I think you are starting to see European politics really going towards the right in general, and I think we're seeing that across the world as migration is really driving a lot of reaction to it, and therefore the right generally will do better out of that situation than the left. The left really need to grapple with immigration in a way that they need to have policies that understand it, and I think they've been a bit confused. The Democrats are a good example of this, where in America, where it's like, we understand the value of immigrants and immigration, and we understand the value of people, and we want to be seen as like the kinder party, but also most of the population is against large waves of immigration. So how do we deal with those two things, and how do we build up our own narrative concerning that, our own story about what we stand for, and what's our clear policy as well. So they were kind of piggybacking on the back of the bipartisan immigration bill, which should have been passed. Trump cleverly but annoyingly, like unfairly if you like, stopped that bill from solving issues so he could campaign on it, and he did that successfully, and there we are. So that's a situation that Germany is in an interesting moment of flux, where you've got the rise of the far left, the rise of the far right, and then how does Scholz himself deal with that? So he realizes that on the left, far left and far right, you have anti-Ukraine assistance. So he's trying to say, look, I'm a peace guy here. I'm helping stop the war by helping Ukraine, but I'm not allowing them to do X, Y, and Z. The problem is, I think you've got to go either hard one way or the other. And I think the Democrats have taught us this. If you try and like balance both ideas and be nuanced, people just aren't very good at being nuanced. We're just not good at being. I like to think I am. I'm thinking quite often about that. But in general, low information voters just want a really clear, obvious narrative and message. And I think Scholz is I think he should just go hard in, a bit like Merz, and I think so. Therefore, Merz will probably win with ease. Right, German MPs have been briefed but the problem. Sorry, I digress. So his point here was Germany's Ukraine support must not come at the cost of our country's future prosperity. And so that he's trying to kind of talk to some of the different sides, I think, of the argument here. But the problem is that as German MPs have been briefed by the Federal Civil Protection Agency, if Ukraine crumbles within the next 6 months, millions of Ukrainians will head west. The official estimate, 10 million, 2 of them to Germany. Unofficial, up to 18 million, 3 or 4 million to Germany. The EU needs to get serious about its planning, re Ukraine, in light of Trump's plans. In other words, if you don't allow Ukraine to win, if you don't help Ukraine prevail, you will be paying way more in terms of a surge of refugees. And Jimmy Rushton here says this is absolutely true to that exact thread. As I've repeatedly argued, if European governments balk at the cost of supporting Ukraine now, they should understand the cost of allowing Ukraine to be defeated by Russia, and it will be far, far greater. That's the immediate cost of like migration and the draw on a welfare state, but also the cost of Russia in the long term prevailing, and so on and so forth. We've got Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the UK, on GB News here saying...
And when I listen to Putin talking about Russian language speakers in parts of Ukraine, the need to take over that country, I hear the voice of Hitler. I hear it's exactly the same argument. And be in no doubt that if he were to succeed in Ukraine, that country would be turned into a vassal state of Russia. It would cease to have any democratic independence, and around the world, it would look like the West had been defeated. It was the extinction of democracy. By the way, I see the same. And when I'm no fan of GB News. It's kind of like the British attempt at doing Fox News, and if anything, it's going to side with being anti-Ukraine. So I like it that Boris Johnson comes on and lays out exactly what the situation is there. So just a little bit more added on in this part. If Ukraine goes down, then we face an even bigger threat on our borders, the borders of the European continent, wherever the democracies butt up against Russia. So it'll be in the Baltic states, it'll be in Georgia. You'll see the impact of a Ukrainian defeat in the Pacific Theatre. You'll see it in the South China Sea.
Well, what is a defeat? Is it giving any territory?
So, Patrick, what I'm saying is, for people watching this thinking, why are we supporting the Ukrainians? It's because otherwise our collective security will be really degraded by a resurgent Russia threatening all sorts of parts of Europe, and we will then have to pay to send British
but we're not really talking about giving Ukraine, are we? I think
if Ukraine goes down.
So that's really good news to hear Boris Johnson being very, very strong and very, very robust there. British troops may have to be deployed to Ukraine if Trump pulls support, so Boris Johnson warns. So here's the Independent talking about Johnson's words there. So we have, let's look for a good quote. If Ukraine goes down, we'll face an even bigger threat, as we heard. He told GB News that the knock-on effects will be felt in the Baltic states, South China Sea. What I'm saying is for people watching thinking, why are we supporting Ukraine? It's the sending our troops to help defend Ukraine. So that's the bit that's being picked up by a lot of news sites talking about the potential to send troops to Ukraine. But that's been the same argument since the beginning of the war, that if Ukraine doesn't prevail, there'll be NATO troops being sent into Poland and the Baltics, etc., etc. So I don't think this is anything particularly new, but it is being picked up quite widely by different news outlets. Now, we've got Hague here, who is William Hague, who was the leader of the Conservative Party from 1997 to 2001, states that Ukraine's collapse would be a bigger humiliation for the US than its withdrawal from Afghanistan. He said on the podcast, Telegraph's podcast, Donald Trump highlighted Joe Biden's humiliation over Afghanistan, but if he ends up with the collapse of Ukraine, that'll be a far bigger humiliation for the US and the power of the US in the world, the former Foreign Secretary said on the Daily Telegraph podcast. So I wonder if that might factor in Trump supporting Ukraine more because he doesn't want the capitulation of Ukraine to Russia to happen on his watch? Or would he just be happy for that and just blame it on the previous administration? I don't know, but that's what William Hague thinks. Now, among Ukraine's European allies, says the Washington Post, there is a quiet but growing shift toward the notion that the war with Russia will end only through negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow involving concessions of Ukrainian territory. This would be as a result of, I think, Europe and the US being too slow in their help for Ukraine and tying their hands behind their backs. Why weren't F-16s there quicker? Why weren't ATACMS there quicker? Why aren't they allowed to shoot missiles deep into Russian territory? Etc., etc., etc. That said, this is also, and I've talked about this a number of times, that we do need to understand that Jake Sullivan and Joe Biden were privy to information that we are not. So when they're making their decisions, they're making it based on an evaluation of all their available data. And we are making it on an evaluation of all our available data. And those data sets are potentially wildly different. So Mark Urban here says, more detail on the crisis in October 2022, when US intelligence believed there's a 50% chance Russia would use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. It's important to understanding Biden's subsequent caution. So that's actually featuring in The Sun, that's in mainstream media in the UK. But just bear that in mind. Like, I know I've said this before, like, yeah, we slag off Jake Sullivan for making very cautious decisions, but if you get it wrong, there's a nuclear war. So, okay, we need to understand the context some. I think those calculations were wrong, and I think history has shown that to be wrong. But I think we need to have at least some understanding as to why you might be so cautious. Right, now moving on to the US. But before we go on to the US and the appointments that have been, or the nominations that have been made, and how they pertain to Ukraine, this isn't just going to be oh, woe is the US. There will be an element of that, but it is going to be, we'll do a couple of Vatnik soups on two of the choices towards the end. It's worth having a look at how Russia is dealing with these nominations. And that should tell you everything in itself. So, first of all, Tom Nichols here, who is staff writer at The Atlantic, he says, right now there are people in the Russian and Chinese ministries of defense who cannot believe how fast they've hit the jackpot. Absolutely. In Russian state television, so this should tell you, in state television, the debate is whether Tulsi Gabbard should be referred to as our agent or as girlfriend. So this is what the Russians themselves are saying. Absolutely incredible. Julia Davis says, meanwhile, on Russian state TV, another translated clip of Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard, introduced by state TV host Vladimir Solovyov as our girlfriend Tulsi. After the clip plays, one panelist asks, is she some sort of a Russian agent? The host quickly replies, yes. So, my point is to those, and I did talk about Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Gaetz and others and Pete Hegseth in a previous breaking news pieces yesterday, and I had some Republicans coming on and saying, yeah, I'm not too happy with that choice, and then actually one of them changed their mind and then saying, no, actually these are good for this and this reason. I think you've got to work really hard, and you've got to really, really want Trump to be making the right decisions. Like, psychologically, there's got to be severe motivated reasoning for you to think that Tulsi Gabbard is the right choice for national intelligence director. When the Russians are literally laughing in your face and saying, is she one of our agents? Yeah, it looks like it, from what she said. And when she was a Democrat, those same Republicans were slagging her off for being so close to Russia, for being a socialist, and for being supportive of Bashar al-Assad and Putin. So you can't slag her off, and then when she comes to your side and has exactly the same views, go, well, actually, no, I think she's a good choice there. And she's actually, there's a lot to like about Tulsi Gabbard. Hang on. Because I'm pretty sure that you were slagging her off a couple of years ago when she was a Democrat with those same views. So I think there's some real double standards going on. And simply put, I think she's a terrible choice. Now, Russian propagandists are not only mocking Donald Trump's wife, Melania, but also future US president himself, calling him Ginger and Donya. Hey, nothing wrong with gingers. They will never realize how small and stupid they look while they do that, says Anton Gerashchenko. Now, I do wonder about the wisdom of Russia doing this. And I guess if they don't want peace, then this is the right way to go about it. If they want a peace that where they can get the most out of that negotiation, a forced negotiation where they'll get to keep the Donbass and Crimea, get Ukrainian neutrality, and then not to join the EU and not to join NATO, which is kind of what JD Vance has said, right? You're looking at those people in place, and you've got Tulsi Gabbard there. You've got Pete Hegseth as a Secretary of Defense. You've got all these problematic appointments. And you've got Trump, who's broadly pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian, as we've seen from his own words. Then you want... I think slagging off Trump and ridiculing his wife and showing naked pictures of her on TV is kind of the wrong way to go. And that there is an element that they are winding Trump up, and Trump could flip. And if Trump flips, then you've got the US probably going even harder on against Russia than Biden was. Because I don't think Trump's going to be like... He does worry about nuclear war all the time. It's one of the things that featured a lot in his rallies, actually. If you listen to his words, he says, we're worrying about climate change, we should worry about nuclear war more. So he might have an element of anti-escalation in him. So that's interesting. But there you do get this sense that he would more likely just go all in on supporting Ukraine if he was pushed to it. At the moment, he's not. He's going to screw... I think he's much more likely to screw over Ukraine. So therefore, Russia have to play it quite cleverly. And I don't know that this is playing it cleverly. But, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Steve Rosenberg, BBC journalist in Moscow, is doing an amazing job. I can't believe he hasn't been locked up. Says, in terms of administrative skills, one Russian paper today calls Trump a big baby who doesn't know how to work in a team. It's unclear that what will tip the scale, his new confidence or his incompetence, which hasn't gone away. Now, funnily enough, you'd be amazed to know that I agree with this sentiment. So just on past form, I'm justified in looking at what happened during the 2016 to 2020 administration, where he said, I'm the best at hiring the best people. I always get the best people in. And then he turned over more people than you could poke a hairy stick at. He fired loads of people because it turns out he's not very good at working in a team, and people can't say certain things to him, and he's very thin-skinned, and he's narcissistic. All of which doesn't make for a good team scenario whereby you're listening to criticisms, taking on board, and self-improving. And I think Russia realised this. But again, if you're coming out in public and saying all these things and basically slagging off Trump, then you are going to get Trump to react more negatively to you, and you might not achieve your goals. Okay, now let's move on to who Trump has appointed. And I'm going to start you off with this. Now, some of this I will have already told you in previous breaking news, but we'll quickly go over it. But there are things like this that, in my opinion, right, if I was someone that was interested in democracy, and actually, interestingly, the polls have come out to suggest that the American population aren't that interested in democracy. And in fact, when you look at polls of Republican voters for Trump, only a quarter of them were worried about the insurrection January the 6th. And basically everyone else is like, it's my guy, I don't really care. So they're worried about democracy. When you ask them about the other side, they're like, I think the Democrats are a threat to democracy. Okay, in what way? No. Do you think someone who's allowed an insurrection, facilitated, even motivated an insurrection, is a threat to democracy? No, it's my guy, don't really care. So some really interesting data coming out. There's a great analysis of it from the Bulwark recently, and it is slightly worrying because actually you think that Americans, as the electorate, as the voters, would be all about, yay, I'm up for democracy. But their definition of democracy is really slippery. And I think it's basically democracy is whoever my guy is. If I get to vote for and it is when you have this idea that was very prevalent in the campaign, which is if the other side win, it's because they're cheating. So Trump said this very clearly, the only way the Democrats can win is by cheating. Then your whole sense of democracy is warped. It's like, we can't have a fair election, and therefore the only way democracy can work is if my side wins. That's a really dangerous position to be in. So the electorate believes this, and then you get this sort of sentiment from a Republican lawmaker. If I was interested in democracy, knowing what democracy is and should be, like a proper free and fair democratic system, I would crack bricks hearing this.
There's no question he's the leader of our party. So now he's got a mission statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is, we need to embrace it. All of it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. That's it.
You may somehow intuitively like that. I am going to give you a warning shot, because listen to the words he says. This is absolutely terrifying. This is terrifying.
Statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is.
His goals and objectives, his mission, whatever that is. In other words, it doesn't matter what the content is of his policies. It doesn't matter. He's got a mission statement. If he says jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads, we jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. It doesn't matter what he's asking us to do. It doesn't matter what that mission is. He's literally told you that there is no... I'm not interested in the moral evaluation of what I'm being asked to do as a lawmaker. I just have to pay fealty to our Uberführer, our Trumpian overlord here. I have to jump exactly as high as he says I have to jump. And if I need to scratch my head because he's told me to, I will scratch my head. It doesn't matter what the moral dimension of those actions are. Now, if this is what the situation, the opinion is of at least some of the lawmakers that are in place in Congress, then you are going to be sliding towards an autocracy. I would never say anything like that. I'd be like, I'm going to back my leader to the hilt as long as my leader is saying the right things and wanting the right things from my electorate. Like, I'd be caveats all over that. Now, let's start with the good. So we've got looking like Mike Waltz is going to be, as mentioned, the pick for security advisor. And he was certainly at the beginning of the war pro-Ukraine. He voted for Ukraine aid. He then towed the party line later, but at least he's visited Kyiv. Like, that's a really big signal, by the way, because you've also got John Thune, who has been elected by secret ballot, the majority Senate leader. And what's interesting there is he's pro-Ukraine, and he's actually not particularly in favor of Trump. And he's got in, and this tells you that there could be an interesting time ahead, because as Senate Majority Leader, he was voted in because there was a secret ballot, which is to say that in the Senate, there's a recognition that they don't want to do exactly what your man's just said, who's probably a representative. He's not a senator. He's a Texan representative. But senators who are in there for 6 years and much more serious about ruling are not so overtly pro-Trump in that way that they will just genuflect before Trump. So that Rick Scott, who was a senator who would do that, didn't even get to the second round of secret ballot voting. And it was between John Cornyn, who's a strong supporter of Ukraine, and John Thune, who's a strong supporter of Ukraine, and Thune got through. This is good because it's the Senate still might be the grown-ups in the room, is what I'm saying. That is a good selection for Ukraine. So you've got a national security advisor here who is a good, at least not the worst choice. And John Thune, who in all honesty, given the options, is one of your best choices for Senate Majority Leader. We've got diplomat Brian Hook, who may become the special US envoy to Ukraine, and he might be fairly good. Main candidate for the post of special envoy to Ukraine for negotiations on ending the war from Donald Trump is Brian Hook, says an article talking about that. He, from September 2018 to August 2020, he served as US Special Representative for Iran and Senior Policy Advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. So he's a little bit more of an old school guy who could be a good choice for Ukraine. So we're going to go through the good ones first. And so, yeah, this is Mike Waltz on the right there. He might be okay. But then we get to the guy that was on the left there. So, okay, we're now going straight into the, oh dear, this is a bit of a problem. So Pete Hegseth, and I know some people said, oh, he's been in the National Guard, he's this, he's that, he'll be fine. This is the single most political choice for Secretary of Defense that's ever been made, as many people are claiming. He's also, as I explained yesterday, a Christian nationalist, which means that he has not just really strong political agenda, but he's got theological agenda to throw onto his position in charge of the armed forces of the United States, which is 3 million people, almost $900 billion worth of budget. He's deeply unqualified for that position, and he doesn't sound like he's very pro-Ukraine at all. So this is a challenge for Ukraine. There's no doubt about it. And I know some of you have come on and said, oh, he'll be great. I think you just don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. There are a lot of people who are exceptionally worried about Pete Hegseth. I would be worried about it just from a Christian nationalist point of view. But let's go to this analysis.
Paul Rega, what happens on day one? I mean, this is a department that makes or breaks anyone's presidency. So what happens on day one with him in charge?
Angelo's assessment is really important because Hegseth is effective. Don't dismiss him. He is extremely effective in communicating the message and rallying people and embodying the brand and being a culture warrior.
This is absolutely right. So why he was chosen is because he's on Fox News, and Trump watches Fox News. He would embody Project 2025, like pretty literally. That is basically, he is the human embodiment of Project 2025. Everything that Pete Hegseth says is in Project 2025. And Trump has seen him rail against culture wars issues on Fox and goes, that's my guy. And he's effective at doing that. He's an effective communicator. That's why he's been on Fox News for 8 years, right? And he's written a book that lays out his politics. Not that Trump would have read it, but it pretty much lays out his Christian nationalistic Project 2025 agenda.
And that is really what is unique here. He is, whether he's qualified or not, he's the most overtly political appointee we've ever seen, and an extreme political appointee. I mean, this is so far from a moderate Secretary of Defense that I don't think we have a parallel. So when Kamala Harris used to say, we're not going back, Pete Hegseth is the person who's going to roll back every single thing. He's going to take away abortion rights in the military. He's going to remove equality for women. He's going to implement a trans ban. He's going to take out the senior leadership that aren't loyal. The Pentagon is going to be the beachhead for everything that Trump wants to do to change our country. And Pete Hegseth is going to be the general in the front line, carrying the flag, covered in the tattoos, and carrying the message.
And he's literally covered in the tattoos. He's got a couple of, a bunch of symbology that you might just dismiss. Oh, that's just the Jerusalem cross. When you put it together with Deus Vulti and or whatever it is, you got these overtly far right Christian nationalist symbology on him that is, I think, and when you put that together with literally what he said, then you're like, okay, yeah.
And what? And everyone will fall in line?
That's the question now. Like, what is the Democratic response? Who is going to lead now?
What's the response inside the military?
Right now, the shock will wear off quickly. It's not going to be like the Democratic Party where they're going to be, shattered and crying for weeks. I mean, the Department of Defense is built to try to withstand this. So now leaders are going to emerge. A lot of people who are going to retire are not going to retire. They're going to try to stay in and be like General Milley and others who hold the line and keep these people in check. But all the political appointees are gone. So it's not just Trump. It's his political appointees that are going to be asking everybody at the lower level to do crazy stuff. And that's where the real fights are going to be. They're going to be in those back offices all around the Pentagon, especially in the first couple of months.
So there you go. There's going to be all sorts of chaos and infighting potentially. There might be resistance from military personnel who are going to stay on precisely because they don't like the direction of travel that it could go in. And Colby Badwar, who himself is like superbly very conservative, says willing to bet that Senator Cassidy is not alone in this, who said that obviously doesn't know who Pete Hegseth is, so won't comment, but Badwar says Hegseth is a pick that is coming totally out of left field. While he's a combat veteran and major in the National Guard, he doesn't have any executive experience either in government or private sector, and the Department of Defense's 3 million employees takes up approximately half the US federal government's discretionary budget. So needless to say, a high degree of managerial competence is needed to succeed in this position, and many people are saying he just doesn't have that. Okay, we're going to move on from that. So that's your DOD guy. Then you've got Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is going to be the great Elon Elon Musk, as I said in my previous video, as in capitalize, great Elon Musk, like that's his title. And American Patriot capitalized as well, Vivek Ramaswamy. These guys are creating the Doge, the DOG. By the way, it's connected. It's a really interesting bit I was seeing on this. The language, Doge is this coin, this crypto coin, which is why they've done that. But it actually comes from Il Duce, which is Mussolini, which is fascism, which is, I don't know, quite interesting. Anyway, he's already started this. I say started this Department of Government Efficiency. He's given himself the grey tick on Twitter for that. He's started up the Department of Government Efficiency and already given it an official government Twitter labeling. So anyway, Elon Musk is going to be working at the center of the government. And this is quite interesting because, and quite important, you guys need to understand that this oligarch, this idealistic oligarch or ideologue, will be at the center of everything that's taking place in the incoming Trump administration. And he is very much anti-Ukraine, right? So remember that. Okay, Lauren Windsor says, a senator told me that the room on a hill is that Elon Musk is threatening to fund a primary challenge to any House Republican who doesn't fall in line with Trump's agenda. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, and he's just become $100 billion richer as a result of Trump getting in. Like, his net worth has now gone up to $334 billion. Right? He is obscenely rich, right? He can do anything more than any human on earth. And you might say, oh, it's asset rich. And like, no, he's got a load of money as well, right? This man is the richest man on earth. So he, more than anyone on earth, he can do anything he wants. He's now at the center of the government as an oligarch, right in every meeting, every phone call that's going on with Trump and every world leader. Musk is there, as far as we are being led to understand. He can throw his money around and achieve whatever he wants. If we look at, it turns out that the Republicans got into power on the back of an awful lot more money than we originally thought, and it only came from 7 people. As someone says, what a broken political system. So you got Timothy Mellon, 197 million. The Uhlines, 134 million. Musk, 133 million. Miriam Adelson, 132 million. Kenneth Griffin, 100 million. The Yasses, 96 million. And Paul Singer, $59 million. Wow. Right, so that's so where the Democrats did an awful lot of fundraising, that majority of that came, or a large proportion of that came from small donations from individuals. We are potentially in a period of oligarchy, right, where the oligarchs are not only very important, they're actually at the center of the government, and they are stripping the government of excesses and wastes that will benefit those contracts. So if you're thinking, oh, you know, should we be putting tariffs on Chinese electric cars coming into the US? Yes, of course that's going to happen. That will benefit Tesla. What will be going on with regards to environmental legislation or any other safety legislation regarding SpaceX and their ability to, that'll be stripped. That'll be gone. So SpaceX can do what it like. It'll get even bigger contracts. Boeing will go out the window. NASA will just become SpaceX, and you've got Musk's fingerprints over freaking everything. Like, he is your Bond villain. Like, it blows my mind. So Shane Harris here says, when the first thing you say about your CIA pick is what a great job. That's getting ahead of that was in the wrong place. We'll come to that later. So continuing on Musk, Joe Walsh here says, so a former Republican, says, imagine if during the 2020 campaign, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook had come out and publicly endorsed Biden, used his social media platforms to push pro-Biden information and spread disinformation about Trump, then spent millions of his own money on pro-Biden PACs, and then campaigned his butt off for Biden. And then when Biden won, Zuckerberg became Biden's closest advisor, basically setting up camp in the White House. Look, it's a free country, but I'm just wondering, would Hannity and the rest of the right-wing media world be upset? Would Trump supporters be upset? Is there a freaking double standard going on here? It gets worse. You know, previously I've compared Elon Musk to George Soros and saying if you saw George Soros doing that, you would go nuts. Well, check this out.
Where is the George Soros of the right? Where do we find?
Where is the George Soros of the right? Musk puts up his hand and gets a cheer. Speaker at Mar-a-Lago, where is the George Soros of the right? Elon Musk proudly raises his hand. I thought George Soros' involvement in politics was supposed to be a bad thing. Yeah, it's all right when it happens on the right. Oh, I get it. Oh, okay, it's fine when Musk does it. When George Soros does it, and he didn't even do it anything like Musk is doing it, he is the bogeyman. He is terrible for doing that. But Musk doing it, that's fine. Now, it's interesting that Europe's richest man is suing Elon Musk. Europe's richest man has a bunch of newspaper and media outlets, and Musk's Twitter, or X, has not entered into any negotiations concerning the spreading of those media sources across Twitter in ways that there have been negotiations with, say, Google and Meta and whatnot. Musk is like, I don't really care. As a result, it's ending up going to court. That's interesting. I wonder what happened there. Rich man against a rich man. Elon Musk's near constant presence at Mar-a-Lago since President-elect Trump's victory has begun to wear on people in Trump's inner circle, sources say. Quote, he's behaving as if he's co-president and making sure everyone knows it, is the claim in NBC News. Now, get a load of this. This is Lewis Goodall from the news agents. He's a really good political analyst, journalist. Says just the most astounding couple of paragraphs. It's pure oligarchy territory. So I don't know exactly what newspaper this is. In nearly every meeting that President-elect Donald J. Trump holds at Mar-a-Lago, alongside him is someone who has been elected to nothing, nominated to nothing, and only a few months ago had no meaningful relationship with Trump. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, has ascended to a position of extraordinary, unofficial influence in Mr. Trump's transition process, playing a role that makes him indisputably America's most powerful private citizen. He has sat in on nearly every job interview with the Trump team and bonded with the Trump family, and is trying to install his Silicon Valley friends, David Sachs, Peter Thiel, in plum positions in the next administration. But that's fine with you. Are you a Republican that finds that okay? If you are, you need to have a think about whether you have real double standards. I have to say, though, as poor a business proposition it's been to him, the influence buying Twitter has bought Musk is priceless. A remarkably astute move, at least for now. So, yeah, it didn't make money. Twitter's been a poor acquisition from a business point of view in the short term, but in the long term, insanely good. So what else is there to say? Yeah, okay. Then you have one of the picks for CIA. So this is John Ratcliffe. John Ratcliffe was chosen because he's good at chasing up people over retribution. And he, as a CIA pick, is just another indication that the CIA and the DOJ are going to be used to chase people up and get retribution. Okay, let's get towards Ukraine again. So inside Ukraine, experts are worrying about Musk and more than any of the other ones. So for us, the main problem is Musk's influence, says Serhiy Furza, managing director at Dragon Capital, deputy managing director. And this is, I think, possibly true, that actually, you know, Musk is the one you've got to worry about even more so, because he's ideologically now in this place where he's been festering for some time around David Sachs and Peter Thiel and these people who are vehemently anti-Ukraine, whereas someone like I don't know Mike Waltz as a position, you know, as a nominee, is someone that Ukraine need not worry so much about. Another person they need to worry about, and in fact the US population needs to worry about, is Tulsi Gabbard. And I talked about this yesterday. So Christopher Miller said the person who published a conspiratorial tweet below, so basically excusing Russia's invasion of Ukraine and blaming NATO and the US administration for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's who Tulsi Gabbard is. And she's now being nominated to the head of Director of National Intelligence. So the person you want to put in charge of all your intelligence work against Russia, right, is a pro-Russian shill. So, yeah, she's advocated that Russia launches unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the largest, most devastating war in European soil in 80 years. and she's blamed NATO and US, and she's now been nominated to National Intelligence Director. James Miller says, who is he? Syria, Russia, Ukraine analyst, former editor of Places. Holy crap, Polar, are we really talking about Tulsi Gabbard being the Director of National Intelligence? There are 8 billion human beings. I can't think of 5 who are more compromised than her. Might as well just give the FSB head, Alexander Bortnikov, an office in the Pentagon. Serious people who are not overtly political, like they're out in the analyst community, are saying this is insane. This is absolutely insane. Nikolai Holmov say, and for good, reacting to the comment, if anyone is wondering how bad the Gabbard appointment is, I'll just say that I've never seen the Russia or US security or European experts on Twitter as united and as outspoken as they are on this. So if there's anything that's united people in the intelligence community, it's that Tulsi Gabbard is by far and away the dumbest decision. That it is, or not the dumbest, because we could argue Matt Gates's, but is an insanely bad choice. So those of you who came on my threads yesterday and were trying to justify this, you are swimming upstream, and it looks very much like you just want it to be a great decision because Trump has made it. You would argue you just want it to be a bad decision because Trump made it. No, it is clearly, objectively a bad decision based on what she has said. Listen to her words. So, Nikolai Holmov said, for good reason, any intelligence sharing with the US once she starts getting briefings will be done so in the full knowledge that there can be little confidence in its security and confidentiality. Let's hope she fails the vetting process. Alexander Clarkson says, if Trump follows through with it, it kills comprehensive intelligence sharing between European NATO states and the US. Brits, French, Italians, Poles will all make sure to hold the most sensitive information back. And then Julia Ioff says, so excited for another 4 years of Republicans shocked and disgusted in private, but unanimously vote for Trump's agenda anyway stories. So this is in response to Andrew Desiderio saying, my phone is blowing up with Senate Republican aides aghast at Trump's nomination of Matt Gaetz, who we come on to in a second, some quite confidentially saying there's no way their boss votes to confirm him. We'll see. So the same, I think, will be for Tulsi Gabbard. The question is, Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Gaetz, will they both get, and we'll come on to Matt Gaetz, sorry, that one was ahead of the game, in a second, but it's a similar sort of situation. Representative Don Bayer here, so this is a Democrat saying, Tulsi Gabbard is wholly unqualified to serve as DNI. She has absolutely no experience with the intelligence community and repeatedly parrots Putin and al-Assad talking points. Allowing her to lead US intelligence agencies would be detrimental to our national security. It's as simple as that. Right, so let's do a Vatnik soup from Pekka Kaliuniemi on Tulsi Gabbard to give us a bit of background on who she is. She's best known for blaming absolutely everything on the US Democrats and NATO, and for being a fan of totalitarian regimes like Russia and Syria. Tulsi was raised in accordance with the teachings of the Science of Identity Foundation, SIF, a religious group. So she was in a cult, by the way. A religious group described as secretive and abusive cult. Former member has described SIF as virulently homophobic, often anti-Islamic and misogynist, where its founder, Chris Butler, is considered to be akin to a god. Gabbard became politically active at a relatively young age, and she was elected to the Hawaii House of Representatives when she was 21. She was in a field medical unit and was deployed to Iraq between 2004 and 5, and was stationed in Kuwait between 2008 and 9 as a platoon leader. While in Congress, she was a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee between 2013 and 2016. She later resigned to endorse Bernie Sanders' campaign for the 2016 US presidential election. So she started veering. She started becoming not your mainstream Democrat, kind of fell off the wagon or became more kind of socialist orientated, which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders. But to give you an understanding of where she was going, she later resigned to endorse Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign. While in Congress, she was a staunch critic of Barack Obama for refusing to admit that the real enemy of the US is actually radical Islam and Islamic extremism, often appearing on Fox News to comment on the issue. Since she started criticizing Obama and picking fights inside the Democratic Party, she's been praised more by the people like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson than the Democrats. Gabbard ran for US presidency in 2020 election. Hillary Clinton described her as the favorite of the Russians, and that she was being groomed by the Republicans for the candidacy. So back in when Hillary Clinton was running for president in 2020, Hillary Clinton called her a Russian, a favourite of the Russians. Anyway, she filed a defamation lawsuit against Clinton, but dropped it 5 months later. Interestingly, Tulsi used the same law firm that represented Rudy Giuliani and George Papadopoulos during the investigation of the Russian interference in the 2016 US election. Gabbard was also endorsed by former KKK boss David Duke and neo-Nazi and conspiracy theorist Richard B. Spencer. After dropping out of the race, she endorsed Joe Biden. Gabbard has criticised the neoliberal, neoconservative war machine, stating that money the US uses for wars should be used for other stuff like war against Islamic terrorism. Some, have speculated that this harsh stance against Islam might stem from her upbringing in the anti-Islamic cult. Tulsi visited Syria in 2017 in a fact-finding mission. She had 2 unplanned meetings with Syrian totalitarian leader Bashar al-Assad. Later, she expressed skepticism about the Khan Shaykhun chemical attacks and voted against condemning the Syrian government for war crimes and crimes against humanity. OPCW-led investigation later attributed the Khan Shaykhun attack to al-Assad's forces. She also refused to say who paid for her trip to Syria. Gabbard's trip to have had a chat with al-Assad was later praised by our favourite weapons inspector and chatroom enjoyer Scott Ritter. So, connections are aplenty. When it comes to Ukraine, Gabbard parrots the same Kremlin narrative. The US and NATO provoked Putin to attack Ukraine. Peace negotiations are needed after Putin got what he wanted. As is tradition to prevent nuclear war, it's a proxy war between US and Russia, and sanctions are hurting the West and not Russia. She also blames the elite cabal of warmongers for the war. She said that the war could have been prevented by declaring that Ukraine can't join NATO. But as those who have read Putin's 2022 essay on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, it was never about NATO, but Putin's obsession over Ukraine being part of Russia. In a recent keynote speech, she also praised the Durham report, stating that the Russian collusion in the 2016 election was manufactured hoax. She was also one of the speakers at the anti-war event Rage Against the War Machine in February 2023. Tulsi has been careful about commenting on the atrocities and the ongoing genocide, and I couldn't find any mention of Bucha, Izium, Kherson, Donbass, Crimea, etc. I guess she wants to be careful and just defame Biden and the Democrats and disregard the complexity of war crimes. Gabbard left the Democratic Party in October 2022, blaming its leadership for cowardly wokeness, anti-white racism, being hostile to people of faith and spirituality, and dragging us closer to nuclear war. After this, she signed a deal with Fox News and started working as a paid contributor for the network. She's endorsed several Republican candidates for Senate, including J.D. Vance, who said that he doesn't care what happens in Ukraine. Some have speculated that she'd be running mate for Donald Trump in 2024 presidential election. This would make sense. He wrote this before that, before the presidential campaign. But she's speaking like any MAGA member would, condemning the woke mind virus and outright refusing to condemn Russia's war. So that's who she is, and she's going to be in charge of the DNI. Then there are big troubles. Then you've got Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz has been accused of having sex with a minor and trafficking in a minor, and he's going to be placed in charge of the law as the Attorney General. Is absolutely insane. Justice Department employees stunned at Trump's insane, unbelievable choice of Matt Gaetz for attorney, says NBC News. Gaetz, who was the subject of a federal sex trafficking investigation and ended without charges, has been a fierce Trump supporter and has regularly attacked both the Justice Department and the FBI, including calling on the FBI to be defunded and abolished. Now, what's significant about this, and we will see some connections to Ukraine, Trump's pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, has been unable to practice law. So he's only been a lawyer for 2 years before becoming a lawmaker, like a politician. But he's been unable to practice law in Florida 3 times over the past 5 years due to failure to pay his dues and a failure to affirm compliance and trust account rules. Like, why is this guy being put in that position? Now, he is being investigated by the Ethics Commission for those charges, right? And he has just resigned from Congress, from the House of Representatives, which is odd because he's been nominated, but he hasn't made that role yet. And this is going to cause a bit of a problem because that's a position that can't be filled for some time, and the Republicans will lose a voting member of the House of Representatives. So why has he resigned? It turns out, this has just come out today, Matt Gaetz' resignation from Congress came 2 days before the House Ethics Committee was set to vote on releasing the highly damaging report outlining Hitt's investigation into the Republican, according to multiple sources familiar with the probe. The committee planned to vote Friday on releasing the report. Ethics loses its jurisdiction over Gaetz when he leaves Congress. The secretive panel has been investigating Gaetz on and off since 2021. This is a deal he has done with Trump to get him to be able to resign because he's going to be put as AG, so that he doesn't have to have the results of the Ethics Committee released on him. This is absolutely stunning. Secretive panel has been investigating Gaetz on and off since 2021. President-elect Donald Trump announced that he would nominate Gaetz to be Attorney General on Wednesday. Absolutely shocking. So, yeah, he just won re-election to the House and can't be AG unless confirmed by Senate next year. So why now? Why is he resigned now? Because the House Ethics Committee is about to make a decision on Gaetz' alleged underage sex trafficking in 2 days. Right, so let's look at the Vatnik soup on him, a close ally of Donald Trump, and he's famous for voting against aid to Ukraine. So Gaetz is a lawyer by profession. He earned his Juris Doctor from the William and Mary Law School in 2007, was admitted to the Florida bar in February 2008. In October 2021, he was suspended from practicing law in Florida due to unpaid fees. During his career in politics, Gaetz has promoted several white nationalist figures. In January 2018, Matt Gaetz invited Holocaust denier, I agree with David Cole about Auschwitz and the gas chambers not being real, as he put it, Charles C. Johnson, to attend Trump's State of the Union address. Johnson is known for raising money for the neo-Nazi site The Daily Stormer and being banned from Twitter after asking money to take out BLM figure DeRay McKesson. In 2018 and 2020, he attended political rallies with members of the Proud Boys, a far-right organisation designated as terrorist group in Canada and in New Zealand. In 2021, he toured with Marjorie Taylor Greene in their nationwide America First tour. The tour was all about the stolen election of 2020, and they went as far as saying that the Second Amendment was for maintaining, that's the right to bear arms, maintaining within the citizenry the ability to maintain an armed rebellion against the government if that becomes necessary. In February 2023, Gaetz invited an accused murderer, Corey Ryan Beckman, to lead a Pledge of Allegiance at a judiciary hearing. In April 2020, he spent almost $200,000 of taxpayer money to rent an office from his campaign donor and real estate developer friend Collier Merrill. He paid below market rent for the space. In the same year, he spent tens of thousands of dollars for speech writing consultation, which is prohibited by the House rules. His office claimed that it was a clerical error. In February 2020, remember, this is a guy who's going to put in charge of the law. In February 2021, Matt and many other Republicans skipped voting and enlisted other people to vote for them while citing on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The real reason was they couldn't vote was because they were attending the Conservative Political Action Conference. So like most politicians, Gaetz could be described as a pathological liar. And as is tradition in US politics, Gaetz diminishes politics into us versus them rhetoric. And the main pet peeve is Antifa. He's called for patriots to defend America against the mob, meaning Antifa, who is trying to destroy America. During the nationwide BLM protest, Gaetz tweeted, now that we clearly see Antifa as terrorists, can we hunt them down like we do in the Middle East? He blamed Antifa for the US Capitol attack, suggesting that they were masquerading as Trump supporters. Incidentally, Joel Valdez, Gaetz' senior communications aide, was heavily involved in live reporting of the Capitol attack. In 2020, Gaetz got caught in the middle of a sex trafficking investigation when his old pal, tax collector Joel Greenberg, was indicted on sex trafficking of a 17-year-old girl and creating fake IDs to facilitate his sex trafficking activities. This led to investigations to look into Gaetz' activities, and later that year, the Justice Department opened its investigations of Gaetz for allegedly sex trafficking the same 17-year-old girl. Greenberg had written a confession letter in 2021 and said he and Gaetz paid to have sex with multiple women, including 17-year-old. Venmo transactions showed that Matt had transferred $900 to Greenberg, which was then sent to 3 young women the next day. Greenberg's confession letters also stated that Gaetz had allegedly asked him to hook up with college students on a regular basis. The same investigation also revealed that Gaetz had snorted cocaine at a party with an escort who was hired with taxpayer money for a no-show job at a Florida county office. And by the way, Matt Gaetz has shown these videos to fellow Congress people in the House of Representatives who have rejected him. So fellow Republicans know what he's like and they say, yeah, I've seen the videos. He's shown me the videos. Matt and his pals also made a trip to the Bahamas in 2018. During a trip, they hung out with many young women and allegedly paid for sex with them. Matt ultimately evaded the charges in sex trafficking probe and was not charged with these crimes despite the overwhelming evidence. Prior, Gates had even asked privately Trump for a blanket pardon for all of his and some of his unknown associates' crime. And I think what's happening here is a form of pardoning. Trump denied that Gates had asked him for a pardon, but a day later it was revealed that he had reportedly wanted to defend Matt, but his advisors talked him out of it because of the seriousness of the allegations. Greenberg also tried to get a pardon from Trump through a political consultant, Roger Stone, but was ultimately sentenced to 11 years in prison. When it comes to Russia-Ukrainian war, Matt has clearly picked a side. In February 2023, he, along with 10 other Republican members, introduced the Ukraine Fatigue Bill. The bill would formally call for an end to all aid from the US to Ukraine. Before this, he's voted against every bill that has either been for support of Ukraine or condemnation of Russia's actions. In February 2023, Gates referred to an article published by a known Chinese state-controlled media, Global Times, suggesting that the Azov Battalion has access to US weapons since 2018. The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Colin Kahl, replied that, as a general matter, I don't take Beijing's propaganda at face value. Lauren Boebert wants Trump to pick Matt as his running mate, which, as scary as it sounds, wouldn't be a big surprise. So again, this was written beforehand. So Matt Gaetz is and there are all the kind of receipts to those. As I've been reading that, there are lots of links and pictures and videos. So it is a bit of an issue. This is what some of his fellows think.
I just think it's silly. I believe that the president is probably rewarding him for being such a loyal soldier to the president. But the president is smart enough and his team is smart enough to know that Mr. Gates will never get confirmed by the Senate. Mr. Gates breaks things to break things, and then once he breaks it even more. And that is somebody who should not be the Attorney General of the United States. I can tell you, I'm not the only one out of 222 that we'll end up with that is happy that he is leaving this conference.
Okay.
In other words, that's a Republican there saying, I'm happy he's resigned, he won't get confirmed. And John Bolton here, like him or loathe him, this is his opinion.
Thank you so much for being here on a big day.
It is a big day.
It's a big day.
Not a good day, but a big day.
It's a big day. Let me get your reaction to this latest breaking news. The fact that President-elect Trump intends to nominate Matt Gaetz to run the Department of Justice. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that?
Well, it must be the worst nomination for a cabinet position in American history. I think this is something that falls well outside the scope of deference that should be given to a president in nominating members of his senior team. Gaetz is not only totally incompetent for this job, he doesn't have the character. He is a person of moral turpitude. And notwithstanding how difficult it may be politically, this is a nomination the Republican Party should oppose.
Thank you.
And I think generally they do. So it's going to be difficult. But it's like the choice of people who are as diametrically opposed to aiding Ukraine as possible. It's like he's trying to choose people that suck for Ukraine. Luckily, John Thune has got through on that secret ballot, as I mentioned, and he's going to be majority leader for the Senate, which, as some people said, as Tendai here says, is a real kick in the face to actually the MAGA administration. The Trump administration, because this is the senators, the Republican senators saying, we know what you want. You want Rick Scott and you want us to be anti-Ukraine and you want us to be this and that. No, we want an old school Republican to be our leader. And I think that's interesting. So I hope it's wrong, but I'm hearing through the grapevine about this bonkers plan. Trump would adjourn both houses of Congress under Article 2, Section 3, and then recess appoint his cabinet. So we talked about recess appointments yesterday, about how they're kind of unconstitutional. Then it depends how you see it. So recess appointments, so you can bypass the appointment through the Senate by unilaterally appointing them. It is in the Constitution, but it's how far you stretch it and how you utilize it. Obama tried to do this in 2014, and unanimously the Supreme Court voted that down. Said you can't do that. But the basic principle, they voted for the basic principle of recess appointments to hold. So it depends on your interpretation, but the idea here is that this would be a really dubious use of it. So as predicate for Trump's exercise of adjournment power, one house of Congress would seek the other house's consent to adjourn and be denied. So Speaker of the House would need to be complicit in evisceration of the Senate's advice and consent role. House Speaker Mike Johnson needs to say no to this right away. So there is some plan afoot that could adjourn both houses, and then Trump would just force through his own decisions unilaterally. And again, autocracy 101. Now, President Duda of Poland has said, who's a Trump fan, by the way, he's like in that kind of populist conservative mold. I cannot imagine that President Trump would allow Russia to destroy Ukraine, a country in which the American taxpayer, for whose money Trump will soon be held accountable when he takes office, has invested such huge amounts. So a bit of a sunk cost fallacy thing here. This is a matter of respect for the US taxpayers' money. And this is also a matter of America getting involved and America not losing. So he's trying to say, look, Trump won't like to lose this. There's a lot of money and efforts being put into supporting Ukraine. If Trump was just to pull out, he would not only lose, he'd lose all that effort and time and blah, blah, blah. Dean Blundell, who's a Canadian very interested in disinformation and whatnot, is saying, well, replying to Andrew Coyne, he said, this is an emergency. The key posts in the government of the United States, responsible for the safety and security of not just the US, but the democratic world at a time of maximum international peril, are now in the hands of some of the most dangerously incompetent, corrupt, and fanatical people on the face of the earth. To which Dean Blundell says, and it'd be interesting to get the view of people like Michael Vucher and other Canadians out there, I've only been saying this for 5 years. America is over and Canada is next. Every nominee categorically hates Canada and Trudeau. So these people that are getting voted in are not just problematic for Ukraine, they're problematic for Canada, and loves Poilievre and Harper. So these are the people who are like super conservative in Canada and are really problematically involved in sort of their own investigations and stuff in Canada, but they have the huge support of the US. Sit back and watch, or grab some courage and get in the game, because it's happening, says Dean Blundell. In other words, you're going to see the same kind of takeover, populist takeover in Canada, and it's scary stuff. Another really upbeat and positive video there from me. Another long one, I do apologise, but I think we do need to dwell on some of these matters as they are super, super important. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.